1% for insurance.
What do we have here? About 2 minutes after noon?
Yes, sir.
12:01.
About a minute.
12:01. Well, good afternoon. Welcome to the Public Safety Committee meeting. I'm hoping that Sylvia from Charlotte will be here. I know in just a few moments, hopefully. Last month or so, she's been talking about an issue that's very important to her, so we'll have a discussion on it either way and then identify that. I was hoping we can get Sylvia here momentarily, but we'll go through the departments as we go through. Let's go around the table real quick. I'm the chair of the Public Safety Committee for the Assembly, Paul Holman.
Bernie Hall, Assembly member.
Mike Gutierrez, Assembly member.
And from the departments, we've got
Bill Miller, Anchorage Police.
And Mark Hall, Anchorage Fire.
and just so you know, we are recorded for just for a minute. So if we could go around the room and identify who you represent.
Mike Nolan, Public Safety Commission.
I'm Sharon Schimmer on the Public Safety Advisory Commission also.
Bernie Bradley, Transportation Commission. And Paul, I called the CHAR office and they didn't know about the meeting. Sylvia's sick, so they're going to try and get somebody here.
Hopefully, she's the one that asked to be on the meeting. We got the agenda.
Ron Crowell, Transportation Commission.
Andy Tierney, Transportation Commission.
Very good. Thank you, and welcome to being here.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
We have plenty of room at the table.
Absolutely. Would you like to join us at the table?
That'd be good.
Come on up. Be able to take notes if you need to.
Yeah, I hope so.
Thank you, Jared. I was going to make that suggestion at the beginning, but I neglected to do so. We should have copies of an agenda here in just a moment. What typically happens at the Public Safety Advisory Commission, Public Safety Committee, I'm sorry, the Assembly, is we get about an hour and we discuss issues of importance in the area of public safety. And again, we have persons to be heard, usually after we go through the department heads, whoever represents the department, to talk about their particular issue or department division and issues. And then, in this case, Sylvia had asked that she have a meeting here with the Public Safety Committee and many members of the both divisions and the Transportation and Public Safety Commissions to bring an awareness of some problems that she has seen and her organization has seen. I believe relating to taxi cab permits, chauffeur licenses, things like that around the holidays. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So I'll take one of these and pass these around. We'll raise good. And with that, hey, thank you. And we are on tape, sir, just so you know. And if you'd like to introduce yourself and who you're representing with.
Sure. I'm Bruce Jamison, Chair of the Anchorage Transportation Commission.
Very good. Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. We'll just go to the table.
Okay.
So, as we're stating, we go around the table and initially we talk about some issues pertaining to the department. So we have Captain Miller from the Anchorage Police Department. Captain, one of the things that happened real recently that was a change in an ordinance was some fireworks. Now, we're going to have a meeting separate to that on that issue. I know there's at least some discussion on, if not repealing, at least some modifications to the ordinance that was passed late in the year of 2010. But can you give us a heads up as to the department, how it handled maybe calls relating to fireworks on New Year's Eve in light of the fact there was an ordinance change allowing?
That actual question I wasn't prepared for.
Okay.
I also wasn't here during New Year's, but just knowing the way the department works, since it's a legal activity, there would not have been any calls for service that were generated unless there was some kind of life safety problem. Obviously, the deal out in Eagle River would have generated a call for service, or if you maybe had somebody that was deliberately shooting fireworks at somebody else, or you had some fireworks go down and there was a fire started or something like that. Outside of that, there wouldn't have been a call generated. With respect to the fireworks ordinance itself, I did get a chance to talk to the chief before I came down to the meeting here, and the department hasn't taken a position one way or another on whether or not the ordinance is good or bad or any of that. The one thing that we are concerned about, and I assume that the fire department can speak to this too, is by making the possession of fireworks legal all year long, that leaves the police with a problem during the summer and spring when we really try and ramp up with wildfire efforts. Everybody who's lived in Anchorage knows that we have a real concern about a hillside wildfire during the late spring and early summer months. Well, if fireworks are legal and an officer gets called out to the hillside, just the act of possession is not anything that we could do anything about. So if they saw somebody who was at, say, a bonfire, juvenile bonfire up there, and aside from anything else, everything was legal, but they had fireworks in their possession, officer would be powerless to confiscate those fireworks. And so what I think we're kicking around now is asking for a amendment to the ordinance to make it legal only during specific periods of the year, that being when there's snow on the ground, so that officers actually have some kind of recourse, particularly during the most dangerous time of the year, which is that late spring and summer deal, when we're really concerned about wildfires and trying to address that. But outside of that, the department doesn't take any position on good or bad as far as the ordinance itself goes.
Okay, that's good to note. And again, I believe we want to take our time. Of course, currently under the ordinance that was changed, it's only allowed to fire off fireworks in the municipality from 9:30 p.m. until 1 a.m. So essentially December 31st, January 1st. And by law, this year was 1 year, and we've got one more year ahead of us, and then the law sunsets unless either an assembly or I project that we may see this as a ballot initiative by the community, by the public, and it may come to a vote of the people. But be it as it may, I know that there's some interest in either a repeal or modification ordinance, and I can tell you to the rest of some of the members, I know I have 226 emails, and that's just emails.
We all have.
On fireworks alone. I don't know how many anybody else has.
The same, yeah.
About that, and then numerous phone calls coming in, and they're mixed. They're mixed. I mean, we have people thanking us, and at the same time, we have people saying it was the worst idea I've had in my life in Anchorage. So, any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a little bit confused because I'm hearing you say that, at least I think I am, that the fireworks ordinance made it legal to have fireworks, all year round.
For the simple possession.
Okay. Well, I missed that one. I truly did.
I'm sorry?
I missed that. Yeah, because it was my understanding that it was just for, you can have them and shoot them off just for New Year's Eve between the hours of 9:30 and 1. I missed the fact that you can still possess them, and was not the case before, right?
Right.
I totally missed that one.
Yeah.
Thank
I'll
you, Mr.
go
Chairman.
back and personally reread the ordinance, but
Me too.
the belief at the department is that just the possession is no longer illegal.
I recall we asked that question during debate on the issue, because the question was, well, we didn't want to have an ordinance that it was legal to use them during certain hours on that one night, but it wasn't legal to possess them, so you couldn't legally go out to the valley, buy them, bring them back to your home before 9 p.m. on New Year's Eve. So it was, but the answer to that question was no, that it would be legal to possess them and bring them into the municipality. I think a seasonal approach to that would be fine. Say it's legal to possess them November through the end of December. That gives people the opportunity to go purchase what they want, but not during the summer, and then would give you the authority to confiscate something when you find it during those months when we absolutely do not want people using fireworks. Thank you.
Good point. Good point. Ms. Hall? All right, and Kevin, at the end of the year, the budget time, we were able to secure some funding for perhaps recruitment for Fall Academy, I understand. Briefly, do you have any information on how that's going? Is there an update on that?
We're actually starting to plan for a Fall Academy. I'm in charge of the training section, and I've given direction to the folks out of training. We're starting to gather the material, order the extra ammunition, get the supplies and stuff like that together. I don't know yet that any decisions have been made about recruitment. We've had conversation about it, but how far we are down that track, I don't know, other than we've got our eye on an October Academy, and that's right now what we're aiming for.
Any idea of roughly how many people, or I guess that remains to be seen with the numbers made second, first quarter?
Yeah, it remains to be seen. I mean, you know, from our perspective, we want as many as we can. We can handle a maximum of 32 because of constraints about the number of FTOs that we have. The class size isn't really a problem. It's the back end stuff. Getting them out in the cars with working officers and stuff like that. We have a limited number of senior officers that we can use to train them. So the maximum that we can handle is probably 32. And we'd like to obviously get as many as we can.
Can you explain briefly, and then maybe some of the folks on the body know this a little bit, but what typically happens? Let's say we hire 30 officers in an academy. How many do you usually see coming out the pipe, either after physical training in an academy, an academic setting, or through the field training, or I guess through the end of their probation training?
If we get an academy, we look for anywhere between 45 and probably 60%, I think, is the high end of the number of recruits who actually end up working. And it's a variety of reasons, all the way from people who come up here from the lower 48 and girlfriends and wives say, I can't stand the place, you know, you're either going back with me or you're here alone, to a pretty fair number of people find out that police work isn't what they thought it was, doesn't look like it did on TV, and so they decide they're going to do something else. Shift work, holidays, stuff like that. The reality really sets in once they get on FTO. They can't get leave and figure out they've got to be working at night. That's a pretty fair number of people. Some people just can't handle the mental stress. There is a adjustment period and kind of a time when your thinking changes about different things, and so, but long and short of it is we look for between 40 and probably high end of 60% people going into the academy actually get off of FTO. So in a class of 28 to 32, we look at, you know, anywhere about 16, 17, 18 people actually hitting the street as graduated off of field training.
Is there any way increasing those odds? I mean, I know I'm probably...
Man, I'll tell you, we've looked at it, I've looked at it, we've talked about training, you know, doing different things in training. There are some things that we try as best we can. The things like police work not being what it looked like when they saw it on TV. You know, I don't know how you address that when cold reality sets in. There's really, we try and make training as realistic as we can. We try and identify people who are here until something better comes open as early as we can in the academy. And then there's the other things like family and those kind of problems that crop up. About the best we've done is try and identify those kind of issues as early as we can and get them resolved. Either, you know, stick it out or go and don't invest any more of your time, don't waste any more of our time. And so that's about as good as we've got.
Just from my own personal perspective, I don't want you increasing the size. I really, I think if somebody's not right for the job, we don't want them on the job. You know, I know this department has very high standards, and I want it to stay that way. I was reading a sort of an unrelated article not long ago about how to get and keep good employees, and sort of the old colloquialism that somebody's grandfather passed on to them was don't pee in your soup. It's awfully hard to get it out once you have it in. I don't want those. If the job's not right for them and they're not right for the job, I'd like to see them wash out. I know that makes it harder for us because we spend time and money recruiting them, but even with the standards that we've seen, every now and then we have problems, and that's, you know, that's humanity. It's always going to happen. But I think we have a very, very small number of problems because this department has exceptionally high standards, and I'd like to see it remain that way. I know it's frustrating when you recruit 30 people and you might get 10 or 12 to finish up, but then you can at least be fairly certain those 10 or 12 are going to be good police officers.
Yeah, and like I said, we try and have that conversation as early as we can identify that drift, and so to minimize the amount of time and effort on everybody's part, that's where we focus so far.
We're on tape, Mr. Fellows. I recognize Mr. Fellows to enter the room. You want to
Mark Butler with the Community Council, and I'm a member, as Sharon is as well, of the Mayor's Public Safety Advisory Commission, your sister organization.
Okay, that's about it. I would like to task the department, if it's possible, if it convey it back to the chief, that the assembly would like to be considered user-friendly when it comes to whatever the needs of the department are to accomplish an academy. I'm excited to hear October for an academy possibility, and to the extent we can make the budget work, and I know that's going to be a challenge. I mean, that's a continuing challenge, I know, but we need to make the budget work to get staff. And so as soon as you know or identify things that you will need, as you realize the first quarter budget revision will be here before we know it. We'll blink 3 times and we'll be here. So we all need to, I guess, prepare to make sure that everything's in motion and everything's file timely, so we can have those actions taken. So I believe I speak for the committee, and hopefully the assembly will bring in the same. If there's anything we need to do to help further that along, we're certainly willing to do so. So if you let us know, the sooner the better.
I will. I'll pass that along.
Anything else from the police department's perspective? Okay, Chief Hall from Fire Department, would you like to share with us on?
Just, I would like to reiterate what Cap Miller said, that Chief Mew and I did talk last night, and he mentioned that the month of December would be a month that only they could be possessed, fireworks could be possessed, for all the reasons that Cap Miller just said. But we did have a brief conversation, he and I, last night. And then the fire department, we obviously wouldn't want fireworks during the middle of the summer, as Mr. Gutierrez pointed out, that we have a high level of urban and wildland interface, so we have some serious problems with it. The safety aspects, we did have one injury this year. There out in the river, the gentleman that hurt his hand. But we're not going to come out one way or the other on the ordinance. That's where y'all are at. Y'all make the rules and we enforce them. But the police chief and I are on the same page when it comes to that.
Do you recall, Chief, if you don't have the numbers, I understand, there's a statewide reporting to injuries, I believe. Do you recall that these numbers, if they receive the data, the numbers, can they tell us definitively what it looks like? Anecdotally, I've heard it's no more than what we've seen in years past.
If you remember the name Cleo Hill, yeah. Cleo was the deputy fire marshal for a long time, and she's an inspector for us now. I was talking with them, their fire prevention group, about fireworks, and she mentioned that if you go to the State of Alaska fire page, there are no injuries in the State of Alaska in regards to fireworks. I kind of found that hard to believe, but she said, look, we've looked into it. We've had to take stances on this before. Nationally, you can get them nationally. You can see where some of the injuries have occurred, and there have been a couple of deaths to fireworks incidental. Actually, and my deputy today was telling me, and you might remember, we had a fatality by a young boy that was in a car that had fireworks in it, and another firework hit it. So there's a conflict right there with what Cleo was telling me. And
that was in Seward about 30 years ago.
There you go. And so it did happen in the State of Alaska, but there's
that the one where the dad threw the cigarette in the back or something?
I think so.
That was recent, I think, one of the last decade here.
No, the one that the kid was killed was
Yeah, I would say it was when I was a trooper, which would have been 84,
yeah, I was going to say it was at least that long ago.
Yeah.
Time is flying.
Yeah.
A lot of 50-year-olds say that.
There's a lot of 50-year-old people in the room too now.
Good point. To make light of it.
So we are on the same page, is what I was just wanted to reiterate, that we're working together. And, we didn't notice a tremendous amount of calls because of the fireworks. I could look and find actual numbers for you if you need that, but
it'd be nice to have, I think, if we could, Chief or Captain Miller, same thing, if you guys could give a list of fireworks calls and catalog. And what I'm particularly interested in is, I guess in the early times, when did the calls start coming in? Because remember, the ordinance covered from 9:30 to 1. So what were the earliest calls, and perhaps what were the latest calls? I know, anecdotally, I heard some people saying they went on well past 1 p.m. or 1 a.m., sometimes 2 and 3. I can tell you, my own neighborhood, it seemed to die off at about 1:20. I didn't hear anything after that in my own neighborhood. But at 11:15 to about 11:45, I stood out my driveway to just feel the experience, and I did. I really did.
It was 11:30 in my neighborhood.
They quit.
No, that's when I went to sleep.
Oh, is that? Well, some people complain about not being able to sleep, and that's, I understand that's an issue. But yes, that would be very helpful, and if maybe by next month, if we need.
And then just one thing, I'll just, we have applied for the SAFER grant. We applied last year. We have not heard yet from them, and whether or not we're going to get the award. Absolutely. It's Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Grant. And so we've got our application in, and we're waiting for the next step.
Do you know roughly, I know what you know what you applied for, do you know roughly what we stand to gain as a community?
If we were able to get the full grant that we asked for, it'll be between 16 and 29 firefighters and 3 safety officers.
Wow. For what period?
2 years. They're committed for 2 years, and there are some rules that come along with that. There's no matching funds. There are no, we do have to, if anybody leaves in the interim, we have to fill that position, or we lose the money from the SAFER grant, and we're not in compliance with the grant. So we're trying to make sure that we have all those steps in place, that if somebody retires, or we had 24 retirees last year, and previous to that, the average was 13. So I'm hoping that we're not going to have that many people leave in the next few years. We've got a pretty, the last time we hired was 2007. So we're in need of hiring. So if the SAFER grant doesn't come through, I'll be knocking on the door of my boss to find out what can we do. And he'll come to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So after the 2 years, what happens?
After the 2 years, we either we put them into our operating budget, and they stay with us, or we would lay them off.
So you don't have to maintain the officers that you hire?
No, ma'am, not after the 2 years. No.
Okay.
I would argue that we need them.
Of course, you
And
need
we
them,
would
but
try to keep them,
in
but,
terms of the grant, I wanted to
yes.
know if that was a grant agreement. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And then Chief, and I'm hopeful that it comes through, could we make sure we get, I guess you'd say, regular updates so that it doesn't surprise at the end of the second year that we're now looking at, when we have to fund the money, and by the way, these 29 people are subject to layoffs or gone, so that we know how to build in years out.
Absolutely.
We need to strategize and plan for that. So.
And OMB has been made well aware of that.
And then next, I guess, my age-old question, can you give us status on, I guess, Medic 7 and or any equipment issues that you might have out of service?
Actually, our shop has done very well in keeping our rigs up to par and keeping them on the roads. Medic 7 will be addressed at first quarter budget revision, is what I was told. So I'll be knocking on the door then, as y'all will. And our equipment, we have ordered, the 2 engines are in purchasing for engine 2 and engine 8 downtown and Hillside, O'Malley Road. And we have also, actually I saw on the draft agenda for today, the pre-agenda, that we're going to be asking for a truck company and 2 ambulances next year.
Does that be for a bond?
Yes. We're doing pretty good. Our shop has done a very good job on staying on top of things.
I have to go back to the bond, and maybe someone on the bond here can help refresh my memory. The bond for Medic 7, did that include monies for O&M for
Yes, sir.
medics?
It did.
So is there, you're saying first quarter budget revision request, is there a reason why we're having to wait to either hire or staff?
The administration, when he was presenting his budget this year, I don't know if you remember him asking, somebody asked specifically about that, and the mayor said that it was going to be addressed at first quarter.
Okay, fair enough. Mr. Chairman. Yes.
Chief, a couple of years ago, 2008 in particular, my first year on the body, we had a lot of problems with overtime in the department because we had just huge amounts of Family and Medical Leave Act. Everybody was having a baby. And then we had a rash of injuries too. And I know the department did a lot to address that portion of it. How did we do in 2010 as far as overtime from those 2 particular reasons?
We were way over budget because of those specific reasons that you just outlined. I'm not knocking anybody here, and it's the way it is, but my daughter's 16 and a half, and when she was born, the battalion chief called me that day. Matter of fact, I think you were chief. And he called me that day and said, "Are you coming back to work today?" And I said, "No, Chief, and I'm probably going to take a couple of days." So nowadays, they're entitled to family leave and that's 3 months. And they're taking it, which, you know, they're at home taking care of their kids and their wife or their husband. So that's part of our family leave in AFLA. It's the federal or Family Medical Leave Act, and the Alaska Family AFLA is ASCA Family Leave Act, and they run concurrent, and they can continue having time off. And we had significant, matter of fact, today I have at least 24 people out on family leave, injury leave, medical, military leave, and that is a definite problem for me. And as you all know, you put back the 2.6 million to keep engine 10 and truck 11, and that was to keep it running on overtime, to maintain status quo. And so my overtime budget, I think we budgeted 2.4 this year, and we ended up spending 3.6, and it's going to be more than that next year.
With the people you may be able to hire if we get the SAFER grant, that should help alleviate that to a great degree.
Absolutely. After the first year, it will help us tremendously. For the first year, though, let's say we get the SAFER grant, it takes us 6 months just to hire them, to go through the hiring process. But we're trying to streamline that, and as you know, we're trying to get people with credentials. So we're looking at what used to be a 3 to 5 month academy, a 1 month academy, basically to show them Anchorage's ways and what we do. And then our paramedics, if we get, we need paramedics. If we get paramedics, they have to ride with a FTO, if you will, and preceptor is what we call them, and they have to prove that they can do the job on their own and follow our orders. It's a good year. So in 2012, if we can hire this year, there'll be a big help. And the money I have for overtime, I can hopefully move over to operating capital.
One last, just a general comment to both of you, just over a question. I know I'm pretty comfortable with police. Under Alaska Police Standards Council, there's state statutes that basically describe both the hiring and training qualifications of police officers. Anchorage meets or exceeds those?
Absolutely. Exceeds in almost every case.
Fire department?
We do. And
are there state requirements?
There is a Fire Standards Council. It's not as, I think they're more empowered on the police side. They do set standards for us, and we meet or exceed those in every case.
And I think, Mr. Chair said earlier, I stand by the fact that we exceed. I think it's a great deal. I guess keeping an eye on making sure that it's relevant, that it stays current, that obviously that we, because there are oftentimes changes in laws and policies, and we just got to make sure that that goes that way. So. Okay, well, thank you so much, and please, if this next topic, we'll have a discussion here. I don't want to have people show up at the meeting and not have good, healthy debate and conversation here, but I know you guys have the need for transportation. Sometimes you'll call for transportation for people, both as clients and both sides, people needing help. Emergency management, Mr. Spillers apparently couldn't make it here, and on health, I was going to ask them if they had any statistics on injuries or calls on related to fireworks at the end of the year. There was some sort of E. coli outbreak, I think, on Sprouts or something. I wanted to see if that ever affected Anchorage. But we'll see if we can get that for the next meeting. So, do we have anybody here? I didn't notice them come in for CHAR. Does anybody make it yet for CHAR? They just have an office right across the street here.
I'm trying to get somebody here.
Very good. We may have to schedule a meeting with them specifically and have them come in and meet. Because, you know, I set the meeting and made the invite for everybody based on their. We were going to try to do it last month, and they asked to put it off until January, and they knew when the meeting was, and we notified them. So.
Yeah, I think somebody's out with pneumonia, and I think Rand's going to try and make it happen.
Okay. Hopefully they'll make it shortly. Well, here's one of the things I know that I can tell you what Sylvia has said anecdotally. So I don't have any statistics, unfortunately, but for both Public Safety Advisory Commission and for Transportation Commission, and I was hoping Mr. Frazier could be here. Maybe someone. Yes. Oh, there he is. Made it in. Sorry. We were on tape, so I don't know if you may want to introduce yourself on tape.
Indeed, yeah. I apologize for coming in late. Brent Frazier, Transportation Inspector for the municipality.
Very good. Sorry, I didn't recognize you first. Usually our gentleman.
It's the tie.
It's the tie.
The best dressed man in the room.
Absolutely. The information that I received is, you know, Anchorage CHAR puts together a program called Off the Road. And around the holidays, it's a very big thing they promote. And my understanding is, and they may have it a little off, but my understanding is someone who's too inebriated or impaired, they find themselves such at a drinking establishment, whether it's a restaurant or bar, if they need and they request, that typically they send at least a cab driver for the person, and the second driver, and it doesn't have to be a cab driver, but I believe it has to be somebody who's approved to, perhaps, I don't know if it has to be a chauffeur's permitted licensee or whoever, but typically, as I understood it, it was practically 2 cabs, and one cab driver would park his cab, take the owner's vehicle, and follow the cab with the intoxicated patron. My understanding it from Sylvia and Char's stance is that it's tough enough on any given weekend, the evening on a Friday or Saturday night, to get adequate transportation needs to meet the patrons that are, particularly at Barbary or around those hours. But then at holidays, it just increases exponentially, and there's just not enough staffing out there. And their concerns are is that they put together this money, they put together this program, they want to promote it and use it more and have people use it. But their concern is that there are people that are not using the program because they can't immediately get into a cab and drive off because they can't get the staffing, an adequate staffing to can't get adequate staffing to get into a second cab driver. They have to wait. So the person gets frustrated and basically disappears or perhaps even drives drunk. So that's what the genesis of what Sylvia, and I think they had some statistics and information. I was hoping we could be here.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, again, Brewster Jameson, I'm Chair of the Transportation Commission. Char brought that issue to us at our last meeting, which was on the 27th of December. And we had, it sort of hit us, it took us very much by surprise that there was this issue. We're awfully glad that they came to the Transportation Commission and raised it. Our own members have experienced difficulty in getting cabs at bar break or other times, and we see this as the single most important public safety issue that the cab industry or that the Transportation Commission deals with, is getting drunk drivers off the road at the time when they're likely to be on the road if they don't have other options. So we are, I think, as a body, and I don't mean to speak for everybody here, but we have both a quorum and a majority here and interested in this issue, and we would like to see what we can do to fix it. And there may need to be some regulatory changes. There are a number of issues that come to mind. Who's the other driver going to be? As it was described to us, it's 2 cabs come, but one of the drivers gets out and takes the car home. The other driver drives the person home, and then you have two cabs off the road at that time. But the notion that it could be somebody other than a cab driver is, well, I'm unclear whether that's what kind of regulations would need, regulatory changes would need to be done to accommodate that. Insurance issues, who's driving, when somebody's driving the other person's car home, there's lots of insurance issues. There's the sheer numbers of cabs that are out there available to do this. Do we have an adequate number of cabs in the city already? If we add to the number of cabs by increasing, say, the number of permits, what does that do to the cab industry during the slow times of the year? If you glut the market on account of the busier times. These are challenging issues, and I think that the answers are going to have to come from the cab drivers, the dispatchers, the permit holders, and the restaurant industry. And I think it's going to have to be a combination of things that are done. We heard from Char that outside of Clue Charlie's, there's only room for 10 cabs, and then we heard from cab drivers, that's right, they only have room for 10, and it's impossible to get in there, and there's no cab rank there, and so it's a real deterrent for a cab to show up there because it's such there's no real place for them to be where they can get a customer. So there are lots of issues like this that need to be addressed, and I would think as a whole rather than one piece at a time.
I appreciate that. I'm glad that you guys, I was unaware that you guys had met on it. I'd love to have attended So I apologize, I didn't know about it, I would have actually.
Right, and I think that's part of it is, and kudos to Char for sort of raising the issue, and to us and to you. But I think there's some work that needs to be done here, and it's going to require a number of players, a number of stakeholders to come in and figure out what the best options are.
I remember getting a report, I believe, Mr. Frazier. Do you know roughly how many permits we have for people who can drive a taxi cab legally in the city?
There's currently 173 permits. Thus, there's that many taxi cabs authorized. The number of drivers fluctuates a little bit. Currently, there are somewhere in the neighborhood of about 700, 710 individuals who hold a chauffeur license, which allows them to drive a taxi cab. So that was the long answer. The short answer is that at any given time, there can only be a maximum of 173 taxi cabs on the road.
It strikes me that and of course I know that their kind of shifts, if I'm not mistaken. They used to do like a 7 to 7. It used to be like a 12-hour day. Or I've taken a couple cabs myself in my life, and I remember talking to the persons, and they were either at the beginning or the end of the shift, depending on what time of the night I took the cab, and usually to the airport or from, not necessarily the establishments. Not that I'm embarrassed to take that from the But it seems to me that there probably isn't 173 cabs on the road. So is there room, perhaps, and here's just another idea, suggestions, that around the holidays times, perhaps having I don't know, even if it's just a temporary exemption for higher numbers, maybe it's to help, maybe just strictly to address the off-the-road program, where they're guaranteed maybe a direct line payment from Char or whoever that would cover those costs. I mean, is there some way to allow that?
It would probably require, and I'll let Brent talk further in more detail about it, but it would probably require some kind of regulatory change. One of the things is we also have vehicles for hire in this town, which they can't do what cabs do. They're prohibited from doing what cabs do. But there are additional vehicles that are out there that have licensed chauffeurs and who have met certain insurance requirements. You have to pre-arrange for their services under the ordinary regulatory structure. But what about creating an exemption or an additional classification where during certain hours they can come in and help fill that overflow need? But there are lots of these. There are a lot of these issues out there, and they're difficult, and they're complicated in that you got to figure out logistically how to do it. But then the other thing is you've got some regulatory things that may need to be changed at the assembly level, for instance, in order to make it happen.
Certainly entertain anything that might need to be done to address it. So
obviously, it's not just the problem is exacerbated around the holidays. But it's not just a holiday problem. If there are only 170, a maximum of 170 taxi cabs, even if they're all in service at a given time, a lot more than 170 people who shouldn't be driving home from a bar on a given Friday night. I don't know enough about the regulations, but if I have a chauffeur's license, if there's some 700 people out there with the proper license, if I have a chauffeur's license on a 15-passenger van, can I show up at a bar and take a van load of people, or is that something that's restricted that I need a taxi cab permit for?
Well, can you show up if they call you and prearrange it? I guess.
Mac?
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Jameson, Mr. Gutierrez, the problem there is although they hold a chauffeur license, meaning that they've gone through a regimen of drug testing and a physical exam. They've done some training and things necessary to obtain that license. The vehicle is not permitted. If you're saying they just show up in their own vehicle and by virtue of their chauffeur license can go out and do it. The permitting system exists so that the vehicles themselves are inspected and validated. They've gone through a safety check at a mechanical shop. They've been examined cosmetically to meet some of the requirements that have been established in code to provide safety, address public safety concerns. I think just someone showing up with hey, I've got a van and a chauffeur's license, ooh, it's New Year's Eve, I'm going to go make some money, that could be very problematic.
Could somebody go through that process, or maybe we don't have, maybe that's one of the things we have to set up in code, a shuttle service, or does that run afoul of the taxi cabs? Because I know that's a very charged political issue. But at the bar break, it's my understanding, we went through a couple of years ago the whole issue of, well, should we extend the bar hours and allow people to trickle out slowly, because the taxi cabs really only have time to make about one run to a bar. By the time they get back, people don't have the patience. They've either gotten in their own car or gotten in somebody else's car. Could we set up a system that would allow someone to set up a shuttle service where they got their vehicle inspected, they had the proper licensure themselves, and they could only operate during certain times on certain days? Is that something we could do, or would it just be too much trouble to hassle changing the taxi cab?
What I think, just from my own perspective, and this is a personal opinion, I'll let others of the commission speak later, but on this if they wish. It seems that it would make sense to try and maximize the infrastructure, the current permit infrastructure we have, before creating new infrastructure, because the recurring theme we have is we're dying on the vine out here. We don't have enough. We can't make enough money as it is. Our costs are going up. And this is a perennial thing we hear. And you can speculate as to whether it's a bit exaggerated for our benefit or not. But I think it's real that there are. If you add more capacity to a system that has peaks, for sure, where you need more capacity, but big valleys on a day-to-day and day-out basis, you're going to stress the system and make it really hard for the people in the system to make a living.
Yeah, so when you say maximize the current infrastructure, what do you mean?
What I mean is, one of the things that occurs to me is we have to make certain, and we need to develop some data on this, is how, are there any cabs that aren't on the road at bar break, and if so, why? And can we encourage them one way or another to get their cabs on the road during those hours when they're most needed for public safety reasons? It's probably a less desirable time of the day of the 24-hour clock to be out and about, but nevertheless, that's one of the things that they sign up to do when they get an exclusive license to operate a cab in the city. So we need to, I think we need to make certain that we have all of those cabs are on the road. We have anecdotally from Bernadette, one of our members, that she was talking to the dispatcher 2 days before Christmas, what time you would think would be a prime time for Christmas parties and office parties and that sort of thing, where she had to wait for a long time, but she was told that there was some fraction of the cabs that were authorized actually on the road at the time, and so we've got a bunch of cabs sitting at home, not out there at the time when they would likely be needed the most.
I think what strikes me about that is, even if we had every cab on the road, even if we quadrupled the number of taxi cabs, the maximum number of taxi cabs we had, and they were all on the road at the same time at bar break, that would still be woefully inadequate.
I think it's a good place to start, though. I think we certainly. So what I would like to know is what is the actual data, not anecdotal, but what is the actual data of the usage of our current taxi cab infrastructure? I mean, are they on the road at that time? Are they not? And we certainly can and should encourage them to get on the road at that time, because they have a vital public safety function to carry out.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that too. How many people do we have leaving these licensed establishments at the bar break all at the same time? That would be interesting to know too, because then we could judge whether or not that existing infrastructure, even at its maximum, is adequate. Is that something that CHAR tracks? Is it something the licensees could be able to tell us?
It would be difficult to track. They've been I haven't been working on this section, so that's why I really don't want to speak on behalf of CHAR. But I do know that there have been bars that have been voluntarily staggering their hours, and what they discovered is that people, when they close an hour before bar break, those customers will go to existing bars that are open. So you're still going to have thousands of people. But the night that I was waiting for a cab, I was told there were 88 cabs that were out, and I was at no offense to Sharon, I was in Fairview, and it was about I was out there from 2:30 until 3 o'clock in the morning with a great big huge bag of presents, and I should have had a neon sign saying, "Love me, I'm here," because by that time the bartenders had already left and they were closed, and I was in the parking lot by myself. So I was getting kind of anxious about it, and that's when I started asking, well, where are all the cabs? And they said there's 88 out on the road.
Which is what, about half, a little less than, a little more than half.
This is just with yellow cabs. It's not counting checkers, so there are probably more out there. But as far as the number, I can tell you that any increase in cabs right now would be a great improvement to what's existing at this moment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'm curious about the ratio. 173 cabs just doesn't seem to be a lot of cabs for a city the size of Anchorage. What is a typical ratio for a city our size of cabs?
That was a question I was going to ask you.
If I may, Mr.
Sure.
Jameson.
Not that me.
Excuse me, I'm used to
You're used to that.
having you hold the reins. That's a very difficult question to ask, because taxi cab permitting systems are they differ radically from city to city. And
to understand, I'm perfectly okay if you say you don't have the answer to this, but we can get it.
I can get numbers for you, but I just have to forewarn you that they're really apples and oranges.
I understand.
Yes, I have access to the organizations that can come
If I
up.
might, Mr. Holt, Ms. Frazier, if it's possible, Jameson, through the commission, through your office, I know that you're fairly light staffed yourself, but to some extent, is it possible to find similar or comparable cities of our size and perhaps acquire one of those folks? I mean, it's not difficult to go to the size of cities around the country and maybe find within 10, 20,000 and see what their numbers fall. And maybe we'll look at high-low, but they make
We've seen data, and on occasion, he'll present it to the commission on other issues as well. So, it's possible, but it's a significant burden every time you have to go survey 20 or 30 other cities.
it's at the top, maybe 5 above or below the population control.
Yeah. I can tell you it's pretty obvious you put a lot of thought into this, because the moment that you started speaking, you basically hit most of the bullets that I was thinking about with the individuals getting into a personal car and driving it for somebody else, the liability that's there, regardless of what kind of a driver's license you've got. Obviously they're not walking around being insured for driving somebody else's vehicle. It would appear to me, Mr. Chairman, that what really needs to happen here is these groups need to work together to come up with some ideas for us if there's something that we need to do in city ordinance or what have you to address this. But it would appear to me you're the ones that are qualified to address and come up with some answers and solutions to this. However, I do think that it would be critical to us that we look at some kind of a date certain here before we get into it, because the other thing that I know that happened is, and I can't recall the individual now, but somebody I know that came into the airport over the holidays, New Year's Eve, and couldn't get a cab at the airport. I mean, there literally were no cabs available, and that in itself is another issue. So it's obvious that we've got a problem out there that needs to be addressed. How we find a solution to it is beyond me, and I can tell you, to me, that's not going out and necessarily licensing another 173 cabs, because then there's a lot of people that have got a lot of cost and nobody is surviving, and a real downside to that as well.
Yeah, and that's the problem with this. It's just inherent to this system, which is parts communist, parts capitalist, parts feudal, parts managed economy, parts socialist, parts you name it. I mean, this is a very odd industry, and it's.
Let's use the term unique.
It's very, well, unique. Let's put it that
Back
way.
off the odd part, we just use the term unique.
It has pieces and parts that aren't usual, and that and it's really hard to figure out how the incentives work and who can be pushed in what direction without upsetting the apple cart. So it's a different animal than I've ever seen.
Keep going, and Mr. Butler.
One thing that presents a large problem, and trying to do a comparative with Anchorage and every place else, is our geography versus our population. Most other areas that are dealing with a population of this size are in a much smaller geographical area. And consequently, your taxi cab services, bus lines, etc., are concentrated. You have numbers that work against the corporates. Good point.
When the Public Safety Advisory Commission heard CHAR's proposal and worked with this company and others on the problem, their proposal to extend hours in a certain way as to limit the service and so forth, we heard a variety of different things, and pretty much everyone agreed there needed to be more cabs at Barbary. There was no doubt about that. And we also heard a few comments, but some very specific ones, some from some bar owners that, that's not the right word, is it? I'm sorry. What's the right word? Providers? Providers, thank you. Licensees, thank you. That there were some geographical areas that might need some, including Eagle River area. And one licensee suggested that perhaps there could be an Eagle River only license or addition to the other fleet. And I don't know if there has been. When I had a couple things recently. I went out in a taxi cab from the airport a couple times, so coming and going at Christmas, so I got to talk to the cabbies, and they were just whoever showed up, of course. And I asked them, do they go out on Barbary? And a couple of them said, nah, not worth the effort. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, there's big gaps before that. So you have to, if you're driving, you have to be in service during the slow time in order to catch that time. Plus, a lot of the clients are really drunk. So sometimes you get stiff for money. You don't get your pay. You end up calling the police officer. The police officer is, with the guy in the back who won't pay. But they're extremely busy at the same time. And then the other one that I went out with Officer Burns on the mid-shift Saturday night about 2 months ago, and got a big education about downtown in particular, but late night, early morning, Sunday morning problems. And listening to that officer and other officers and just the patrons and people that we met, bar break is a huge problem, and there's a bunch of crazy acting people out there all at once doing stuff. And I don't know if I was a cabbie and someone said I want to go to Eagle River from Spenard or downtown, that I'd want to take them, because all the way out and back, one run and then it's over, and you've waited that whole night.
That's kind of problematic too. I do see that as a potential. Like, for instance, I know there's a certain amount of freedom, I'm sure, that a cab driver doesn't have to go to take a fare. Even if they're dispatched, they can say I'm busy and let somebody else take the dispatch. But that may be another issue. That may be an issue that we may need to address. Maybe there's 88 cabs out there, but 20 of them don't want to go out and deal with drunks.
Well, this is a multifaceted problem, and it's going to require a multifaceted solution. I think one thing we can do initially is gather some data, trying to get our arms around, okay, what really is going on with the cabs that time of night. And then we need to sit down with the industry, which is comprised of several different components. And we need to sit down with the hospitality industry, and we need to figure out, how can we make it better, and then come back to you all and give you some recommendations. And I think that's something we should do.
Make a quick point here, please.
I think that the cab drivers themselves can report what establishments eventually have customers that are the kind that you're talking about, Mark, because that is a problem that everybody needs to be aware of. But I the state law says you can't have anybody that's visually intoxicated on premise. So for somebody to be deployed, whether passed out or the cab driver has to deal with them, I think is possible, but not as common as people would believe.
having worked in the industry, the other perspective. I was going to give you a number here. I'm sorry, I looked like I was probably disconnected. I wasn't. I was looking up statistics. In 2009, APD's crime statistic, the Anchorage area, there were 4,110 drunk transports listed with APD. 4,110. An additional 5,777 drunk problems. Now that necessarily may not have necessitated in driving someone to and from, but they may have dealt with a problem of intoxication. There were 8,270 car crashes in the year 2009, of which 324 of those were DUI. There were 2,250 injury collisions and 17 fatal collisions, of which, of the 17 fatal collisions, 10 of those had alcohol and drugs involved. And then, lastly, the number I found for 2009, 2,604 DUI arrests. And that's in the year 2009 statistics that were captured. Staggering numbers. And I think this is a crucial part, obviously, of trying to provide that non-criminal, non-authority type intervention to try to help ease the pressure, maybe prevent, as we all are concerned about, public safety. And so I appreciate you, Ms. Jameson, your concerns about the fact that this is a public safety matter, and I think we need to look at it. And I think it's very appropriate that we're all here meeting jointly on this. And I just want to take a few moments to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your busy days. A lot of you from work. I know Mr. Frazier, if I might take a point of personal privilege, I used to work with Mr. Frazier just down the hall. And I just want to take a few seconds to brag. A very professionally run office. Very smooth running machine, even in light of what I consider to be a minimal staff, or a very major part of the public's interaction with professional drivers. I think the level of professionalism in the transportation industry has really increased since your tenure in the office. I want to thank you for that. And I'm sure it's not without the support and the advice and guidance of the Commission. So thank you, Mr. Frazier, and the Public Safety Advisory Commission, Dr. Martin, and folks for being here. I really appreciate that. Speaking of which, Mr. Hall, anything?
Yes. Just a quick comment to Captain Miller. I know Chief Hall has left. I understand that neither the police nor the fire are really going to weigh in on the fireworks with an opinion one way or the other in regards to that. But what would be very, very helpful to us is any feedback that you perceive as something that if this continues, it could make it better. I don't see anything inappropriate about either one of those two departments giving information back to us in that regard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to echo your comments and just thank everybody for taking the time out of your busy days by being here, because when you have assembly committees, we need the participation of not just assembly members, but folks on the outside in order to work together and get things done. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Something said, Mr. Chairman.
I'm just going to go around the room. You guys don't mind, we got a few minutes here. Just go around the room. Any comments or suggestions that perhaps regular meetings, anything that might be helpful for the Assembly to help you in your jobs and positions there, sir?
No, nothing for me. Thank you very much for allowing us to speak.
That's great.
No, nothing to add. Thank you for your comments.
Well, yeah, thanks for inviting us. Thanks for raising this issue and keeping it alive. I'd like to can you give us a deadline that we can meet so that we have something tangible that's like, hey, we have to do this before this date, we need to come back.
I'd like to, and I appreciate that, because I know that they're talking specifically around the holidays, and I'm sure there's a ton of holidays, and the one that comes to mind that jumps out of me is St. Patrick's Day, and a lot of people put green in their beer and they drink a lot. Is 90 days too much? 60 days, is that adequate? I would think no, to get some data to be able to come back.
I should be able to have some of the data such that Mr. Jameson is looking for by the end of this month, maybe perhaps by the next commission meeting.
And why don't we put this on the agenda of the next commission meeting?
And when is your next commission meeting?
It's the fourth Monday of this month, which will then be the 24th. January 24th.
If you wouldn't mind, are the public invited to your meeting?
Yes, it's a public meeting, 7:30 p.m. in Assembly Chambers.
If I can make it, I'd love to attend and just listen in. I won't need to participate, just listen.
Why don't we put this back on our agenda for our March meeting?
March meeting, would that be sufficient?
Yeah, and
We're
if it's not, we'll let you know, but I think let's have a deadline to work at. That'll give us the spur that we need to make progress.
March meeting.
If you set up a larger work group for not specific things, but in general, then certainly if you're interested in getting the public to come at all, you can go through the community council system and send a blurb to us, and we can publish it to at least the presidents or potentially thousands of people if this is
I think it is desired. And perhaps we could even meet, another quick question. Does noon on a weekday work for everybody? Is that your preference? I know you're not.
It'd be great if you brought in lunch.
It depends on the day.
We'll look at Mr. Hall's budget. It's New Year's.
Brown bag.
Sir?
Nothing, Mr. Chair.
Dr. Schmark?
Well, this was a really interesting discussion, and I didn't really have much to say when I was listening, but I think there's something that the Public Safety Advisory Commission could contribute. I mean, obviously, you guys can handle the data about the taxis and taxi usage, but Paul, when you were, Mr. Honeman, when you spoke about the stats on accidents, DUIs, I think maybe something that our commission could contribute is an analysis of these data to see how much of that can actually be attributed to this problem that we're talking about, people driving home drunk after they're not visibly intoxicated, of course, but perhaps a little bit intoxicated driving home. Because that's really, we need to look at that, and I think we can do that if we can get the data.
Good, thanks.
Chief, just reflection, Char has a lot of data that they put together themselves that is available to us to get hold of. So it'd be worth getting hold of them because they had some good stuff last
That's a
time.
great point, and I will work with Char and Sylvia, and perhaps you can help me tweak them to get us some data in advance, some information they may have that would be helpful for our research as well. So if I can get Sylvia to get with me, maybe I'll get it distributed to yourself, to the commission members and such. So that's a great point.
Yeah, the one thing I'd like to say is the Off the Road program started in May of 2005. I'm a past president of Anchorage Charter, was president when that was passed, and there has not been a fatality from a licensed establishment in Anchorage since that time. So it is important to have this program increased because it is working. And you know, as far as statistics, I'd be interested to find out also how many of these are coming from homes and not licensed establishments.
Good point, and I will say that those questions can be asked, and in fact oftentimes are, if the person is answering questions, they have obviously legal rights not to answer questions, so we may or may not find that out, but we certainly, I know that's part of the investigation tool in the interviews, is where were you coming from, where did you consume your alcohol, and if, to the extent possible, maybe that data can be captured. I don't know. Captain Miller, at 2004.
I'll have to check with DOT with the fatality crashes. It may be doable. I'm thinking it's going to be a hand search through every report, though, and so probably more time consuming than it's worth.
Maybe we can capture a month or so of the rest, maybe make it a smaller number, so we can give at least a snapshot into it, perhaps.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, last thing I just want to point on this, and we'll close, and that is, last night at the Assembly meeting, there were, as you know, every 2 years, the licensees have to renew their licenses. Mr. Gutierrez and I actually, through the Public Safety Committee side, pulled from the renewals several licensees who were up for renewal that had some issues with compliance checks or other violations in the last 2 years or so. And those licenses we put on a public hearing, probably in a Public Safety Committee. It'll likely be announced so we can quickly get these things through. We're not trying to hold up business. The best we'd probably do at the moment is conditionally protest renewal on those licensees. That doesn't stop them from operating. It simply says we have issues and we'd like to be heard on the matter as a community. And so we'll likely be contacting community councils and your commissions if there are any input, any issues that you think need to be addressed. They're not major issues, but some of them are not having TAMS card operators, some people being served on the premises, minors on the premises. And there's ever big looming issue that keeps getting punted around, and that's the red stripe license on the licensor. I need no one ever really checks for that. And that's something I think we're missing. So as a community, I think we're better if we ask these questions, get it out in the open, and find out if they're operating, if they correct any deficiencies, and the licensees are operating better now than when they were caught in their compliance issues. So that's coming real soon. Hopefully you'll see some announcements on those meetings. So with that, I'm going to end the meeting there. It's, I don't know, Shane, I think.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.